Welcome back to Radio Taiwan International. You're listening to Geek Out. What's your cup of tea, tickles your fancy, or floats your boat? Join us as we share passions from people in Taiwan and around the world. I'm your host, Michelle Chang, and today in the studio we have, again, my very, very good friends, Amanda Stevens.
Hello.
And Jared Friesen.
Hi.
It's the low voice squad here today.
I mean, okay, as far as preferences go, I tend to prefer low voices.
Well, thank you.
Generally.
Is that what you tell all your low voice friends?
Yeah.
I guess the high pitched thing sometimes bothers me quite a bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It can be hard to balance for, but also so can we.
The amount of time I've been called a mumbler in my life.
It's a pet peeve of both of ours, actually, when we're talking to each other, is when we say we can't hear each other. But because we have low voices, it just ends up with us getting in a frustration loop.
It's very validating to be on the radio, actually.
Yes, excellent. But yes, with your voice fine-tuned to, sound like molten magic on air. Yeah.
Oh, that's nice.
Can I put that on my resume?
Yes, absolutely. Okay, to get back to the point, though, what are we geeking out about today?
Actually, we play a lot of role-playing games, which I know that it has been talked about before, but we actually play a lot of them, too, that are not D&D, which may be less mainstream, maybe a little bit less known about. So we were going to kind of share our experiences, maybe starting with D&D.
Yeah,
let's start with it.
D&D is kind of like the gateway RPG.
It's really good for that. I love that about it.
Because it's so mainstream. You hear it mentioned in a lot of pop culture.
And it's got such a legacy and like cultural presence to it.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
been around since the 70s. So
Absolutely.
50 years of a board game going through iterations, set complicated and weird rules for essentially what is just playing make-believe with your friends.
Actually, it is a really good gateway game because it was so formative to the game type in general. So actually, a lot of the games that we're talking about today were probably inspired by experiences with D&D or games that were in and of themselves inspired by D&D because of the following that it had and because that's how a lot of people got exposure.
It's like a lot of art forms. I think it came out inspired by previous things that came before.
Right.
And has gone on to inspire many different things in terms of like iterating on what D&D's done, or also just rejecting or trying to go the other direction from D&D as well.
It's a medium of our time.
Yeah.
It's my new podcast.
So how do we all step in? Shall I go first?
You go first. We'll go around the table.
I'm actually kind of a late bloomer as far as my actual age when I started playing TTRPGs. Eric Gao, who has also been on the show before, is a high school friend of mine. We go way back. And only when I moved back to Taiwan in 2009, I think it was like 28 or 29 years old, he was like, hey, want to come by and play some board games? And I'm like, oh, like Monopoly?
Yeah.
And
That's how it always starts.
He's like, yes, absolutely like Monopoly, but not really. But long story short, he eventually got me into the 4th edition D&D at the time. That's how I got started anyway.
I started in college with like one campaign in 5th edition because I was in college in 2014. That was when the 5th edition of Dungeons & Dragons came out.
It is.
Yeah, I played that one campaign and then like a one-shot, and then there was years until a lady named Michelle in Taiwan.
You may have heard of her.
was just like loomed out of the corner, like, hey kid, want to roll some dice? And it's been like pretty much solid.
I mean, I almost actually said that.
Yeah, pretty much. And I was like,
First set of dice is free.
Yeah. And then it's been the last 4 years. So yeah.
Right. Oh, dude, I'm so glad I asked you if you played D&D, man.
Now I run D&D, so
It's worked out really well for all of us.
Yeah.
Seriously. And Amanda, how did you get started?
Okay, well, nerd up, guys.
Yes.
I was actually introduced to it really early on because I was raised by nerds. They didn't play.
Yes.
But also, there's a Wizards of the Coast headquarters in Seattle, where I'm from. So I would see a lot of like merch, and I loved the Wizards of the Coast shop. Like, it enchanted me as a child.
Oh, I want to go there.
But I didn't know anyone who played. So I had always wanted to play because I was obsessed with dragons. Cut to, like, I even had a D&D wall on my poster. Sorry, what? I even had a D&D poster on my wall.
I was like, wait, excuse me.
Oh my God.
I love this though.
there's
Okay,
so much merch, drywall,
You guys do
posters.
understand what it's like in the mythical land of Seattle. Fast forward to college, finally, I was in a game writing class. Our professor grouped us by people who pitched similar ideas. I got thrown into the pitch group with all the other guys who had pitched a role-playing heavy game. They played D&D. So we got talking and I was like, yeah, I've always wanted to learn. Smash cut to like at a cafe with like 4 people telling me all of these like really complicated. It was right before 5e. So they were on like Pathfinder, 4e, like 4e very was crunchy things, like giving me all these weird dice that were like, this is what this is going to be. This is going to be that. This is it. And it was really fun. The first game I played was actually in first edition, the one from the 70s.
Wow.
Yeah.
You want to guess how I died? Jared knows. Don't say.
know.
Don't say.
Rocks fell.
I died from a bee sting.
Oh
Because bees, there was only one rule for poison back in first edition, and it was a save or die.
Oh my
And I
goodness.
got stung by a giant bee, and I didn't save, so I died.
To be fair, there are rules about action economy. So if you did get attacked by a swarm of bees,
No,
all
Michelle.
doing 1 HP damage.
This was a bee.
Wait, what?
This was
Just one?
This was a large bee, but it didn't matter because the rules from the first edition, Michelle,
okay.
said that bees are poison, and poison is a save or die. So it did not matter that
I'm
it was
sorry.
one bee.
My condolences.
Like it's such a different game back then, because like also the other side of it is if you wanted to do magic, you were elf. Your class
So
was
either
elf.
warrior or elf.
Yeah.
I was thief.
Thief, yeah.
So to get away from Dungeons and Dragons, since we stepped into our true nerdhood, what games have we played?
I wrote a list before we started
Yeah,
because
let's-
I didn't
let's-
want to leave him out. I guess we just go round robin.
Let's go round robin.
What are the games you've played that you
So
remember,
I've done D&D.
Yeah.
I've been invited into friends' Monster of the Week games, and I've done a game called Fiasco, and a world building game called The Quiet Year.
Oh, that sounds so cool.
I love A Quiet Year. Come over and play it sometime. It's like a one evening thing. Done. I got really into the indie role playing series. So in addition to those, because I've played almost all of those with you also. I've also played Call of Cthulhu. Which is like almost as
COC.
crunchy as it gets.
Dude, that's super crunchy.
Another one that I can't remember the name of. I think it's something like Call of Darkness or Heart of Darkness, something like that, where the mechanic was to get any kind of beneficial trait for your character, you had to take a negative trait. So you would get like a broken leg, but you get like really strong. So everyone has a very janky character.
It tracks because people do grow past challenges, right? So if every challenge you take on,
You're starting out the game with like a squint eye
This is
and
more like
like
a dark
handgun
bargain.
proficiency. Like it's everyone is kind of like an Igor in the game.
Like scoliosis and magic powers.
Right, something like that. It's much more along that line. I've also played one called Monster Hearts. I think that's what it's called.
Yes.
Just like teenagers in high school, you can follow with anyone.
Yep.
There's a whole bunch of rules that was
It's
very
very
fun.
high school.
I love it. Oh, you played that one with me too.
Yeah, I was
yes.
there.
Oh my God, yes. All my
That's what
friends are here.
happens when like you find your little group that becomes your table.
Yeah,
You play
exactly.
this
I think I was emo boy.
I was the queen bee.
Yeah, right.
And then also a literal hive queen. So it was literally like an alien queen. Jared, you have one here that's 13 candles.
I have never played this game
Oh.
because I have my own mental health issues, but it's a very dark horror game
Yeah.
where the idea is you have like 3 note cards, and the premise is like 13 days ago the world went dark,
Oh.
Oh wow.
and then
Creepy.
Yeah.
7 days ago they came,
Super creepy.
I love it.
and we don't know what they is.
But that's
I
the
think
best
like the
part.
start is like you go around the circle and it's like everybody says like I saw them do this or I heard they have that, and then
wow.
you have like like a flaw, a virtue, and like a relationship with someone else that are on these note cards, and you have to like succeed on like rolling a bunch of like normal dice and try and like survive a scene or something. And then after that scene ends, when someone has to like burn one of their cards to like try and succeed a roll,
Right.
then you blow a candle out.
I love this.
If you run out of all of your cards, you die. And like everybody's going to run out of index cards by the end. So it's a very like tragic, or like you don't make it out of this apocalypse, but like the stakes get more and more dire as you go along.
That reminds me actually of a 2-person role-playing game.
Candle
It matches.
related. Oh, matches, right.
Right.
So fire.
Right. So it's weird that there's 2 of them. Is that nickel quote? Like if I had a nickel for every time, I'd have 2, but it's weird that I'd have 2.
yeah.
I don't actually know the name of this game because my friend introduced it to me, but it's 2 players, and one person plays the deep, and the other person plays a hero who has gone into the deep to retrieve a treasure, like a gem.
Okay.
And the game starts when you've just retrieved it. Now you have to get out of the deep. And so you explain like why you're doing it, and you give yourself like 5 like little common items. And then you and the deep take turns. The deep will give you a problem. Like, okay, we're trying to get out of the deep. And as you're going across the bridge breaks. Now you're falling off of this like hanging bridge, and then they light a match. And you have to say how you solve the problem before the match burns out.
Right.
Or like gets too close. But the whole point of it is not to actually like hurt yourself, right? So you play with like a big bowl of water in the middle of the table to be clear. But then like you have to say how you're going to fix the problem before it gets either too close to burn your fingers.
Or it burns out.
And you don't have to give the whole story, but you'd say like, oh, I pull out my rope and I throw it around and then I do this. And then you extinguish the match. And then if that's a good solution, like you two barter back and forth, if that's a good solution, you get to explain in more detail how that happens. And then it's your turn. And the first person to succeed 5 times wins.
Having actual fire, like candles or matches in a game, definitely, I think, tickles the lizard brain.
Yeah.
In the back of our heads, with a sense of danger. So I think that the mental health issue could be avoided by very clearly defining lines and veils in the very beginning.
Yeah.
But that sounds awesome. Both of these games.
I think like also like with the fire and the rituals, like finding like what accoutrements go with these games too, because like 13 candles is very minimal. You just need 13 tea candles and note cards.
Yeah.
Scented
or
candles.
with your matches game, it's a bowl of water and some matches too.
Yeah.
Whereas like D&D, pen, paper, at least 3 sheets if you do magic.
7 dice.
7 dice of various different shapes and number of sides. Like first.
To be fair, you can use apps, but as we all know, digital dice have no souls. So, you know.
But like we also, but that's also the fun of the game too. Is like that lizard brain is like that like tactile kind of like ritual. Like we're gonna use things too. It's like it's why half the fun of setting up some board games is just putting out the board.
The stuff.
That's why so many people online have made a living just off selling like the accessories to D&D or RPG
absolutely.
games.
If you need adventuring gear, please visit phoenixdice.com.
The Quiet Year, which is I think a really interesting one because it's kind of a sociological storytelling thing. It is the apocalypse has happened. You and your friends are like cooperatively playing a community and the problems of the community in the quiet year before
the jackals come.
And
it's never defined what they actually are.
It was like
the other one you talked about.
It was like the fall and the jackals. So
I mean, generally things are scarier if they're not defined, right?
Yeah.
The human imagination just makes it the worst thing imaginable in your head.
Yeah. And so like with a quiet year, you just need like a deck of playing cards and each suit is a different season in the year. And so like you start in spring, end in winter, you start projects. It's like how this community tries to survive. And like you do very light world building about like how and where you are to begin with too.
Well, and there's actually an important rule. You're kind of supposed to avoid storytelling. It's supposed to be like minimal narrative because you might get too distracted by like 1 or 2 characters and ignore the rest of the community.
Yes, sorry. I said sociological because like, yeah, you're supposed to avoid like that individual characterness too. What does the community go through?
Like
what
an observer in an anthill.
Yeah.
That's actually pretty neat.
It's really fun.
Yeah, because like you sketch it out on like a sheet of like, we did like
Make a map.
8 by 12 paper. It's very much like if you're in that mindset of like to just like sit with like some drinks and some snacks and just sketch around on a board with.
Just go. That's quite unusual because usually when we do TTRPGs, they're very character centric. Like with your one dude.
Yeah.
And that's neat to actually discuss what a community is doing to survive and why. I mean, not why. I know why. The apocalypse is a very, very frequent topic.
You need an end game. You need a threat.
Absolutely.
What's more threatening to the end of the world?
So, for listeners who are interested, maybe they have played some D&D, maybe they haven't, and they want to jump into TTRPGs, do we have something to recommend?
I have 2 favorite systems.
Okay. Yeah.
Let her spill.
Okay. Well, one of my favorite systems is Monster of the Week. The name comes from the idea of like serialized TV shows, like Scooby-Doo or Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
Supernatural.
Right, because every week you have a different monster.
Yes.
And so you play like a stereotype from that genre.
A trope. Love them.
So like in the games we've played, I play the Spooky, which is like the character that has magic powers from a weird, undesirable source. Jared has played
The Danny Glover, too old for this crap.
Oh, yeah.
Hunter, who's like back in it for one last go.
Right, one last game. There's like things like the Chosen One. There's the Monster.
The conspiracy nut.
The Expert.
The Expert.
The Expert is what it is like. But it's played as like the conspiracy net.
Yeah.
However, why I recommend it for people who start is 1, you probably have a good reference point if you've watched any kind of TV. But 2, the system is really simple. You just need 4 D6. For everyone else, that's 4 just like regular dice.
Regular 6-sided dice.
And the numbers are very small. The rules are much more like relatively simple. It is more role-playing heavy. So if like you're uncomfortable with the acting aspect of it, that might not actually be the one for you.
But there's less math.
There's a lot less math. It's a lot more like easy to reference.
Yeah.
And it does not take itself very seriously, which I think is a really good way to get people into games.
Yeah.
And it also lends itself to like shorter games. So that would be my recommendation. That's one of my favorites.
I agree with that. I agree with that. I mean, Monster of the Week is very easy to play. So for beginners, absolutely check that one out.
I don't want to be obvious and just say like D&D, but I think that it is a very fun one. Like I've latched onto it as like that's where I have a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Because it's got so much like content that you can like go and find the kind of adventure you want.
Yep.
But B is also like that very personal action hero, like pulp adventure.
Yep.
And like when they say pulp, they mean like the Indiana Jones or the Conan the Barbarian, kind of like those fantasies. Like you're very much just like one person and you can pick your trope or your class and go out and have like adventures and fun and romp.
And to that end too, I guess like 5e is a lot simpler than previous iterations.
I love the addition of backgrounds. That's one of the differences between 4 and 5 is more flavor.
Right. Well, and also like if you're new to the game, giving the 5th edition a try is a really good idea because they've simplified a lot of the like mid-level crunch. It's still mid-level crunch, but it's a good place to start. And they have a lot of ways for you to just kind of like randomize a background, something that you like.
Yeah.
So if you feel uncomfortable making that stuff up, you're new, so you don't really know how to do it. There's a lot of like easy get up and go.
Oh, absolutely.
They even have like quick build characters.
Right.
Like if you look up the material, they can even tell you, do you want to play this kind of character, but you don't know how to make it? Here's our recommendations. So you can just write down these numbers or like feats or whatever and go.
One big draw to Monster of the Week is they have so much character in the character creation.
Yeah.
Of like all your abilities and stuff that your class have very clearly defined like evocative names or something.
Yes. Any games that we want to play, like next thing on our list.
Oh,
I've got one.
What?
Kids on Bikes.
Yes.
Because I'm a huge like Stranger Things fan.
I
right?
would like to go with the Kids on Brooms port, which is an extra one from like Kids on Bikes.
Yes. So Kids on Bikes is very similar to, I think it's modeled after stories like It, where there's a bunch of kids, like little kids that encounter crazy
Goonies.
stuff. The Goonies, right?
Ed, and Eddie, if I may even use that cartoon reference.
Hey Arnold.
Exactly. So each player creates a character who is a child. And, you just encounter crazy adventures in your possibly neighborhood.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's fun.
Oh yeah.
What's
like,
Kids on Brooms?
It's basically Kids
Harry
on
Potter
Bikes,
port.
but we watched it in a live play on from Dimension 20.
Sure.
Where 4 American exchange students get transported to like legally distinct Hogwarts, where it's all the same thing too. It's a game where you pick what kind of character you are, and
You're all students.
it's kind of between Monster of the Week and D&D. It uses the 7 dice from D&D, but you get to pick which dice goes into like which stat.
Ah,
And so every time you roll that stat, you have to roll that dice.
I love this.
And so if you're not very smart, you roll a D4. The highest you get is a 4.
Yeah.
The person who's running the game might tell you have to get a 6 on this.
Ah, well, you auto fail that one.
Well, if you roll a 4, you explode and you got to roll your dice again. And so you could get up to the 6 if you have like a really lucky string.
That's
But they
true.
also
It's
have
always
a-
possible.
This one has like the addition of a magic dice too. If you do magic, you get to roll an extra dice with it too.
Oh man, there's 2 that I really want to play right now. I think the first one, I won't go into great detail, but Jared actually introduced me to like a Star Wars version of 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons.
Yes.
And I'm not a really big Star Wars fan, but it does seem like a lot of fun because it takes a lot of the rules, it kind of applies them. And because people have invented like a rule for everything.
Of course.
Much like Star Wars itself. So that seems fun. But I guess the separate system, I've been listening to the Adventure Zone podcast.
Yes.
And they're doing one that sounds like, they've done 2 that sound like a lot of fun.
Yeah, featured on your show, Tales of Our Time.
It is out every Thursday and repeated Sunday. The first one that I want to play is they're currently doing a long season for Blades in the Dark, which is where you play a bad guy criminal doing crimes. And the majority of the game is focused on whatever heist you're doing that day.
I love it.
And it's built so you don't need to spend a lot of time planning. And so you can spend most of your time playing the game
Yes.
and playing the heist. And that seems like a really fun game. They did another system just for a one shot. And I like should have researched more for this, but it's where every character has a Jenga tower.
Oh no.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh,
Do you know
no.
what those called? Point is that like every time that you want to do something, instead of rolling dice, you have to pull the person running the game will require, if it's hard, you have to pull one and then try not to let the tower fall.
Right.
And if it's really hard, and they'll tell you to pull 2 or more, but 2 is the most that we heard before. So
That is potentially disastrous, especially if you're not good at the game Jenga.
someone died. If the tower falls, I think you do die.
Oh, no.
But that seems like such a crazy kooky way to play a game that I really want to try it.
So for people out there who have not tried TTRPGs in general or have just dipped their toe in with just like one game, feel free to jump like dive in. Just jump.
Go ahead. There's a lot out there. And, you don't need to be intimidated by it. You can always just try and find another system.
I want to importantly say too, like find the right people for you too.
Oh yeah.
So
Like,
crucial.
Super important.
And that may not be your friends, because it's who you can feel comfortable being goofy and weird and like oftentimes like kind of vulnerable emotionally with too. Because
True.
if you're telling these stories and you're having fun with them, eventually you're going to start caring about these stories too.
Absolutely. I mean,
Yeah.
if you don't have the physical social group, then yeah, the internet is the I think one of the greatest features to gaming, because you can find anything you need on there,
Yeah.
including a gaming group.
Yeah.
Reach out, give it a shot,
Yeah.
see if it's your cup of tea.
Absolutely. Thanks for geeking out with me, guys.
Of course.
I would love to.
And thanks, listeners, for tuning in to Radio Taiwan International. I'm Michelle Chang, and we'll be back next Thursday with another episode of Geek Out.